After the hate rally that took place in Charlottesville, Virginia, a video went viral showing the beating of a counter-protester named DeAndre Harris. Now that video was extremely graphic. It showed just how viciously he was being beaten by white supremacists and how police just stood by and kind of let it happen. Now, the update to that story is the fact that DeAndre Harris has been served with an arrest warrant. And that arrest warrant indicates that he could potentially face criminal charges for hurting the white supremacists, which sounds crazy, right? Now I'm gonna fill in the details as to why there's a warrant out for his arrest. But before I do so, I just wanna remind you of how viciously he was beaten by these white supremacists. The video that we're about to show you is graphic, so I wanna give you proper warning. But with that said, let's take a look. So now, according to his attorney, he suffered serious injuries as a result, including a concussion, a head laceration that required staples, a fractured wrist, a knee injury, and other abrasions, and contusions across his body as a result of this clash, okay?
He got 10 staples to his head.
Yeah, so we can all see what happened in that video. Now, fast forward to recently, and all of a sudden there is a man by the name of Harold Ray Cruz who says that he was wounded because of DeAndre Harris's actions. He claims that he was hit with a flashlight and that he suffered physical injuries as a result of that. Now, the video shows that the flashlight barely even touched him. And hold on, before we go to this video, so the footage shows that DeAndre Harris using a flashlight wasn't even an issue. Like it barely even touched anyone, right?
Okay, but look, more important than that is the white nationalist Harold Ray Cruz spears Harris. Harris, to defend himself, swings the flashlight and grazes him or misses him or whatever.
Right.
And then you see the video where Harris gets pounded by 6 guys at once and needs the 10 staples in his head. So now you know what right wingers normally say. Hey, look, if I ever get attacked, I got to stand my ground. So Harris was attacked first. There's no question about it. If he was a white right winger, he could take out a gun and shoot all 6 of them and go, I was attacked and I stood my ground.
Yes.
And I was afraid of my life. And by the way, there might have even been some justification because as it turned out, he should have been afraid for his life. They could have killed him there.
They could have very easily killed him, okay.
So, but then Cruz says, oh my God, I've been so aggrieved. In the middle of me nearly lynching this guy, he dared to fight back for a second ineffectually, so I would like to have him arrested. And the cops are like, well, of course, yes, sir, of course, sir.
It wasn't even the cops. He went specifically to a magistrate, and I'll give you the details of laws in Virginia and why this warrant was able to. He was able to get this warrant out for Harris's arrest. Now, before we get to that, though, remember Cruz claimed that he was injured as a result of Harris, using his flashlight against him. But Harris's lawyer actually managed to find footage of Cruz getting hit by a different individual on the head, okay? And this incident happened while Harris was already in the hospital. This was following the assault that Harris had to deal with. Now, we're gonna show you the video that was released by Harris's lawyer. We made sure to use a red circle to make sure you focus on the specific part of the video because there's a lot of commotion, there's a lot of chaos going on. But just pay close attention to a completely different individual hitting Cruz over the head with what appears to be a metal pipe. All right, there it is.
Okay, so the guy who did it is not only not Harris, he's white. Okay?
Exactly.
Now, he shouldn't have done it and he should be arrested. So now Cruz had already attacked Harris and should have been arrested on the spot. By the way, they were right next to the police station. But to be fair to the cops, as I said during the incident, it was madness in the streets, okay? So Cruz does not get arrested. He's walking around and a white counter protester hits him with a pipe. Now, that guy should be arrested because I don't even know that he knew anything about Harris. That incident was already over. Harris is already in the hospital, right? But Cruz, once he gets arrested, goes, oh yeah, it was that no good black guy who hit me. Now, he could have said, it's that white guy who had nothing to do with the incident and you should arrest him because he actually hit me. He did, right?
Yeah.
He's like, no. And he's a leftist or whatever, right? But no, he's not gonna blame the guy who actually did it. He's gonna turn around and blame the black guy who didn't do it.
I mean, it's absurd. So how is it that there's now a warrant out for Harris's arrest, right? Especially with no evidence that he did anything wrong. Well, Vox dug into this, and it's fascinating how easy it is to get a warrant out for someone's arrest. According to Vox, after filing a police report, a victim can approach a magistrate, which is what Cruz did in this case, for an arrest warrant against someone accused of a crime. The magistrate then needs only probable cause based on the victim's testimony, which is a fairly easy requirement to file an arrest warrant. This is what Cruz reportedly did. So, keep in mind that there are still white supremacists who beat Harris out on the loose. They haven't been charged. Only 2 individuals have been charged in that case, okay? And the only reason why they were charged was because people like Shaun King were doing their own investigation and pushing to identify those people so they could actually, be brought to justice. They had to fight for that. But in this case, we're talking about the victim here. Think about how easy it was to get a warrant out for his arrest.
So let's just break it down a little bit further. So there's 6 guys who attack Harris. Only 2 of them are caught so far. And by the way, when Harris swung the flashlight in defense, it was not at Cruz, it was at another one of the white supremacists. So the Cruz thing had absolutely nothing to do with Harris. So there's a couple of problems with the system here. One is that if you're the cops, okay, as I said earlier, it was mayhem. Maybe it was hard to figure out that there was a terrible assault happening right next to your headquarters. But afterwards, that's gotta be a little embarrassing. So you wanna probably spend a lot of time trying to find the guys who did that vicious beating right next to your headquarters. I don't know how much time they've spent on it. I do know Shaun King, by the way, TYT contributor, is one of the guys who spent a lot more time and actually found the guys some of the guys in the video. So then secondly, as Vox explains, it's too easy to get an arrest warrant through a magistrate in that system. So that's not just about DeAndre Harris, it's about the system. But once you find out, I mean, earlier would have been the time, but certainly now, that no, wait, that's not the person who hit Cruz. So we're trying to arrest the guy who's got the 10 staples in his head, who is a victim of a vicious racial beating. That's the time when you take that warrant away. So can we get to that already? That's the injustice we're talking about.
Exactly.
There was only a way that in this country people could use their platform to bring forward issues like this, the systemic injustice in our judicial system amongst certain groups of people, because the people in power that can hand out these warrants for arrest of a victim of a vicious beating, that it maybe can be highlighted and brought forward without the president of the United States saying that's BS and let's shut that down and allowing a big organization to back him up on it. I wish we could find some way to address this issue because it sounds like it's real.
Yeah, well, let me go further, Jared. So obviously, President Trump attacked the black NFL players and now some white NFL players who are kneeling to protest police brutality. Now, and systemic racism, by the way, not just police brutality. And so here we have the system with yet another injustice against an African American. The police didn't do the beating, okay? Be very clear about that, but here's a clear injustice. So not only is the president attacking the people fighting the injustice, trying to fix it, but wouldn't it be amazing if we had a president who actually fought to fix the injustice? And it seems like, no, that's way too much to ask for, right? But shouldn't the president be more upset that an American citizen was beat down viciously based on his race by 6 guys who are not only clear white nationalists, the guy that we're talking about, Cruz, does a podcast called Southern Nationalist Radio.
He doesn't hide the fact that he's a Southern nationalist. His Twitter account, which by the way, he's got protected tweets, which I find hilarious, says Southern nationalist.
Yeah, so known white supremacists. Shouldn't the president be more angry about that beating and the injustice that flowed from it than people who are protesting that injustice? He doesn't care, man. It's not that
he doesn't care, Jake. He's the one who, he fanned the flames. He is the reason why those who planned this hate rally felt emboldened enough to go out there with their cheesy tiki torches and say what they said, do what they did. He's the one who emboldened them, okay? And anyone who denies that is either oblivious or just purposely doesn't want to admit it.
So every player in the NFL should take a knee, including all the white players. And now when the owners are trying to intimidate you and say they're gonna sit you down and make sure they shut you up and make sure you just play for them and entertain the masses for them, but won't treat you with the dignity when you fight back against injustice like this, all of them should kneel down. And Jerry Jones, you're not gonna sit Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott and Des Bryant. You're not gonna do it. So take a knee, force these greedy, pathetic NFL owners to actually, okay, then do it. Go ahead, fire us all. Let's see how the Cowboys turn out if you either bench us or fire us for actually caring to do something about injustices just like this. We dare you. Support independent media. Come join us at the Young Turks. TYTnetwork.com/join.